Welcome to Watch-Worthy Shows. Paramount Plus built its limited series catalog in a particular way, combining the legacy of Showtime, one of the most important premium networks in American television history, with original productions that range from epic westerns to the most urgent political thrillers. The result is a top 10 that covers 5 decades of American history from angles that few platforms would dare explore. But before we begin the video, it would help me out a lot if you took a moment to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your kind support. Number 10. The Happy Face Killer. Melissa Jesperson Moore is 15 years old when she discovers something no child should ever have to. Her father, Keith Hunter Jesperson, is the serial killer known as the Happy Face Killer, named for the smiley faces he left at crime scenes and sent to newspapers and prosecutors while authorities searched for the perpetrator. This limited series does not follow the killer, but his daughter, who grew up not knowing the truth and had to rebuild her entire identity when the reality of who her father was imposed itself over every memory she had of him. Annaleigh Ashford carries the series with a performance that combines confusion, horror, and a filial love that has nowhere to go when the object of that love turns out to be a monster. James Wolk, as Keith, builds something far more unsettling than a conventional villain. An ordinary man whose monstrousness coexisted for years with what appeared to be normal fatherhood. The series holds 87% on Rotten Tomatoes and is one of the most original true crime proposals in recent years, precisely because it chose to tell the story from the angle nobody usually sees. Number 9. George and Tammy. George Jones and Tammy Wynette were the most explosive, most self-destructive, and most influential couple in the history of country music. He was already a legend when they met, but also an alcoholic who sabotaged everything he touched. She was a young singer-songwriter about to become the first lady of country with a voice that could break anyone's heart. Their relationship, which lasted 6 years and produced some of the genre's most important records, was also a story of domestic violence, codependency, and a love that neither of them knew how to let go of. Jessica Chastain and Michael Shannon recorded all of the series' songs themselves, and that detail changes everything. No dubbing, no visible lip sync, just 2 actors who immersed themselves so deeply in their characters that they decided to sing as well. Chastain in particular achieves a Tammy Wynette who is simultaneously strong and heartbreakingly fragile. The series holds 84% on Rotten Tomatoes and received 5 Emmy nominations. A no-concessions portrait of 2 people who hurt each other and produced eternal art in the process. Number 8. Sexy Beast. Southern Spain, the 1990s. Gal Dove is a retired thief living quietly under the Costa del Sol's sun with his wife and friends, convinced he left that world behind for good. Then Don Logan arrives, a completely unhinged criminal with a proposal that Gal cannot refuse, even though every fiber of his being wants to. Based on the British film of the same name from the year 2000, originally starring Ray Winstone and Ben Kingsley, this Paramount Plus prequel is set years before the film's events and explores how Gal became the man he was and how Don Logan became who he is. James McArdle and James Corden build a dynamic between the 2 leads that carries the electric tension of the original without simply copying it. The Andalusian sun in the cinematography contrasts with the violence lurking beneath, and the series' pace never lets its guard down. With 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, it is one of the pleasant surprises of Paramount Plus's original programming and proof that well-made prequels can be as good as their source material. Number 7. The Comey Rule. They fired him by letter while he was in Los Angeles, speaking with FBI agents. He found out watching the news on a television behind the very agents he was addressing. That is how James Comey's career as FBI director ended. And from that moment backward to everything that led there, the Comey Rule tells the whole story. The investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails, Russian interference in the 2016 elections, and the first months of a relationship with President Trump that Comey described as unlike anything he had experienced in decades of public service. This 2-part limited series adapted Comey's own memoirs and turned them into a high-tension political drama. Jeff Daniels as Comey builds a character you can fault for errors in judgment, but not for lack of conviction, and Brendan Gleeson as Trump delivers a method performance that is simultaneously ominous, absurd, and completely destabilizing. The series was filmed and released in record time just before the 2020 elections, which gave it a journalistic urgency that few television fictions have ever achieved. With nearly 3 million viewers on its premiere, it was one of the most significant television events of that year on Paramount+. Number 6. The Act. Everyone loved Dee Dee Blanchard. She was a model mother who sacrificed everything for her sick daughter, a girl in a wheelchair with multiple conditions requiring constant care. The reality was something else entirely. Gypsy did not have any of those illnesses. Her mother had been keeping her artificially sick her entire life in a case of Munchausen by proxy that, when it came to light, shook the entire country. The Act is not just a true crime thriller, it is a disturbing exploration of how abuse can hide behind the perfect image of maternal love. Patricia Arquette as Dee Dee and Joey King as Gypsy build one of the most unsettling relationships television has produced, a mother who genuinely believes she loves her daughter while systematically harming her, and a daughter who has no frame of reference to understand that what is being done to her is not normal. The series is based on the BuzzFeed article that exposed the case and holds 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. Arquette won the Emmy for Best Actress, and Joey King received a nomination. Difficult to watch and completely impossible to stop. Number 5. Waco. Spring 1993. The FBI and ATF surround the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, where religious leader David Koresh lives with his followers. What begins as an arrest operation ends in a 51-day siege that concludes with a fire killing 76 people, including 28 children. Waco does not take sides in a simplistic way. It shows both Koresh's manipulation of his followers and the tactical errors and institutional arrogance of the federal government that turned a manageable situation into a catastrophe. Taylor Kitsch as David Koresh delivers the performance of his career. A man with genuine charisma and a distortion of reality that makes him simultaneously fascinating and dangerous. Michael Shannon as FBI negotiator Gary Nosner provides the perspective from the other side, a man who knew from the beginning that the solution was to keep talking and could never convince his superiors to listen. With an 8.1 on IMDb and a massive audience that made the series one of Paramount Plus's biggest successes, Waco is a lesson in how systems fail the people on both sides of a confrontation. Number 4. Bass Reeves. He rode alone for decades through Indian Territory, capturing more than 3,000 outlaws, never took a fatal bullet, and never killed a man who was not trying to kill him first. Bass Reeves was one of the first black federal marshals west of the Mississippi after the Civil War, and one of the most extraordinary figures of the real Old West, the history that Hollywood ignored for decades because it did not fit its version of the genre. David Oyelowo carries this series on his shoulders with a physical presence and a dignity that turned Reeves into exactly the kind of hero the Western always needed, but rarely had. A man who enforced the law in a territory where law was a fragile abstraction, and did so while being black in Reconstruction-era America, operating within a system that was not built to protect him. The series was created by Chad Feehan within Taylor Sheridan's creative universe and holds 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Visually stunning, with cinematography of the American landscape that recalls the great westerns of classic cinema, and narratively it carries the specific weight of true stories that fiction could not invent. Number 3. The Good Lord Bird. What happens when the man who frees you is completely out of his mind, but right about the most important thing? That is the question Henry Shackelford, a young enslaved boy, has to answer when, through a series of misunderstandings, he ends up being rescued by John Brown, the most radical and most controversial abolitionist of his era, who mistakes him for a girl and takes him into his ragtag band of soldiers who intend to end slavery, even if it means burning the country down. What follows is a historical road trip set in 1857 Kansas, told with dark humor, irreverence, and an honesty about the complexity of good and evil that few series dare to have. Ethan Hawke, as John Brown, is pure fire, a fanatic capable of inspiring devotion and terror in the same scene. Joshua Caleb Johnson, as Henry, carries the narration with a grace that maintains the balance between comedy and the historical weight of what it depicts. The series holds 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, won the AFI Award for TV Program of the Year, and was nominated for the Golden Globe. It is the most underrated limited series in the Paramount Plus catalog and one of the most original ever made about slavery and the fight to abolish it. Number 2. The Offer. The Godfather is considered by many the greatest film ever made. What nobody talks about is how close it came to never existing. Producer Albert S. Ruddy was handed the assignment of adapting it for Paramount Pictures in 1971, and what sounded like an ordinary production job became a war on 10 simultaneous fronts. The studio wanted a low-budget film. Coppola had a vision that fit nobody's expectations. Marlon Brando wanted nothing to do with anyone, and nobody wanted Al Pacino. Frank Sinatra was furious, believing the Jack Woltz character was based on him, and the Italian Mafia had its own demands about how their community would be portrayed. Miles Teller as Ruddy builds a producer who navigates all of that chaos with a composure that seems impossible, and Matthew Goode as Robert Evans is the perfect counterweight. A studio executive who mixes artistic vision and runaway ego in proportions impossible to separate. The series was the most watched launch in Paramount Plus's history at that point and holds 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. For anyone who loves cinema, it is mandatory viewing. Number 1. Fellow Travelers. Hawkins Fuller sees Timothy Laughlin cross the Capitol steps and decides he wants him. That's simple and that complicated, because this is Washington, D.C. in 1953, at the height of the McCarthy era, when the American government hunted gay men with the same ferocity it hunted communists. Hawk works at the State Department, charismatic and fully aware of which lines not to cross. Tim is an idealistic former seminary student full of faith in institutions. They fall in love, and from that moment, their story unfolds over 30 years through the most defining moments of the second half of 20th century America: the Lavender Scare, the Vietnam War protests, the counterculture of the 70s, and the AIDS crisis of the 80s. Matt Bomer and Jonathan Bailey build one of the most complex and painful couples that recent television drama has produced. Hawk, who can never be fully honest even with himself, and Tim, who loves him with an intensity that the world of their era makes impossible to sustain. The series holds 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, won the Peabody Award, and received 3 Emmy nominations. It is the best possible argument that Paramount Plus can compete with any platform when it bets on the right stories. And that wraps up our countdown of the 10 best Paramount Plus limited series of all time. A list that blends true history, politics, romance, and crime with a consistency that proves this platform has far more to offer than most people realize. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our upcoming content. Which one is your favorite? Let us know in the comments.